Hey everybody, welcome to our March version of our career event. And this session we have a panel of amazing linguists who are working in various sectors in the industry. I will explain why I'm using this for industry later. And I'm really happy to have people who I have met, I have been friends with for a long time, and also some of you I have never met, and this is my first time meeting you all. And welcome to our event. And I think we will just start with introduction, and then we'll go for the questions I send to you all, and then we will have a Q&A session, and we will be flexible with the time. So yeah, how about let's do the introduction first, and who wants to go first? Anybody? Tom, do you want to go first? It's like you look really special in this crowd.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I double booked myself here. I planned a holiday, but I was told Tom I'd be here, so here I am on the Isle of Skye, having a bit of a hike. Hello, yeah, my name's Tom. I am in my professional life, I work in the language testing sector. I work as a recognition consultant for PSI services, which I doubt any of you will have heard of. We are one of the 4 UK government-approved, Home Office approved secure English language tests for visa purposes. So if you want to come to the UK to get a job or study at university and you come from a country whose first language isn't English, majority language is English, then you have to prove you can speak English to get a visa. And we're one of the tests that you can take to do that. My job is to liaise with universities to get them to accept our test, because to come to study at university in the UK, you have to prove you can speak English, and the universities prove that on the government's behalf. So yeah, my job is to basically lobby and market to universities and get them to accept the test, which I do 2 days a week alongside the PhD, which is not the reason why I'm here. So yes, that's me. Nice to see you all.
Yes. Great. Do you maybe want to pick the next panelist to speak?
Yeah, sure. Go on, George, my friend from Cambridge.
Hey, Tom. Hello, everyone. I'm George. Tom and I did our masters together at Cambridge more years, 3 years ago now. I am a research engineer for a tech startup called Unlikely AI. We build neurosymbolic AI to kind of combine symbolic reasoning, so kind of like certain, sure, explainable, modifiable approaches to solving problems with neural networks, which are kind of big and scalable, but not as explainable. I've been doing, this job I'm officially starting next week, but I've been with the company for close to 2 years now. And before that, I worked as I was a language engineer here at Unlikely AI, and that was more emphasis on the symbolic side, but didn't really suit my strengths. Before this, I spent a year and a bit at another startup doing speech recognition called Speechmatics, and there I was officially a computational linguist, doing various NLP tasks, making sure that a lot of the outputs were localized and good, so you know how English write their numbers compared to Japanese or Norwegian. I did linguistics, as we all did, and there I specialized in phonetics. I'll hand over to Sean. Do I recognize your name from the panelists' emails?
If it's this Sean, then yes. I don't know if there's another Sean on the call, but I can go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Nonnenmacher, and I'm one of the folks that goes back a long time with Tong, actually, because we have known each other for years. I did a master's and a PhD in linguistics at the University of Pittsburgh, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the US, as you can probably tell by my regional variety. And Tong was there at the same time doing a master's in linguistics. So we got to know each other a little bit, kind of a past lifetime, maybe it feels like, Tong. But I am not doing anything computational. And I may be one of the people you should think of when you put the industry in kind of scare quotes. I still work at a university, not the University of Pittsburgh. I currently have kind of a strange postdoctoral fellowship that's on the administrative side of a university. It's a small private university still in Pittsburgh, called Chatham University. We have about 2,300 students, relatively small, primarily a teaching-based university. But a lot of what I do is work with the Office of Academic Affairs, so the Provost's office, and the President's office on a variety of different special projects. With the provost, and I guess I should say too, I don't know where in the world everyone is coming from. So if I use terms that are unfamiliar for, say, a UK-based education system or a different system, let me know and I can try to clarify those. But with the provost office, I work on academic partnerships. So creating partnerships with other community colleges or universities that would allow students to transfer in at the undergraduate level or the graduate level, for example. A provost is a chief academic officer. I don't know it's the highest academic authority at the university underneath a president or a chancellor. I don't know what the equivalent term, I'm sorry, in the UK would be, and maybe someone can chime in and let us know. But yeah, so essentially the head of the faculty, basically. And so I work on academic partnerships. I do some grant writing for a variety of different purposes across the university. And with the president's office, I primarily support the work that the president does with the board of trustees. So I'll be, sharing more, I guess, as we go through about how linguistics, but other professional experiences I've had in my background kind of led me to this enjoyable but somewhat strange position that I'm in. Nice to meet you all. And I think, is Hannah also one of the panelists? Okay, go for it, Hannah.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Hannah. I use she, her pronouns, and I did my kind of linguistics study, undergrad, master's, PhD in the deep, dark past, finishing up my PhD in 2018. After that, I worked in academia for a couple of years, and decided to kind of leave academia in 2021. So since then, I moved into the charity sector. So I've done a few different jobs in the charity sector, which I'd be happy to talk about at various lengths. The two main ones have been, my first job outside of academia was I worked as a program coordinator for a charity called Action Tutoring. They delivered tutoring programs for children from disadvantaged areas in both primary and secondary school. So I would kind of manage those programs. I coordinate with the volunteers, with the schools, look after the kids, go into schools, kind of facilitate everything. Did a lot of tutoring myself. So having taught at undergraduate and postgraduate level, I then ended up teaching at high school and primary school level. So knocked them all out of the park now. Did that for a couple of years, and now I work as an impact and evaluation manager at Marie Curie. So for those who don't know, Marie Curie is a charity that cares for and provides support for everybody at the end of life, whether that is the person who is at the end of life themselves or the people who are close to that person, including kind of post-bereavement support. So there's clinical support, there's kind of emotional, there's family support, there's practical support, and there's also a lot of research that Marie Curie do about end of life. I'm actually in their kind of research directorate now. But in case anyone doesn't know what impact and evaluation is, I wouldn't be surprised because most people within Marie Curie don't know what it means when I talk about it. Essentially, we use kind of qualitative and quantitative research methods to understand the strengths and weaknesses and areas of improvement and impact of a particular a service or an intervention or an event or anything that Marie Curie does. So we will, I'd say it's maybe like a 60-40 balance between 60% kind of qualitative. So I do a lot of interviews, focus groups, surveys, reflective diaries, other kinds of analysing other kinds of written feedback to look at the kind of impact of the work that the charity does. And then we also do kind of quantitative data analysis of service activity data, like number of patients and kind of how people move through the systems, and kind of health statistics a little bit more broadly. And kind of pull those together to kind of write reports or presentations or posters or anything to kind of show people the kind of core kind of function of a particular service, what difference it seems to be making, where it's not making a difference, what needs to be improved. And those reports are hopefully then used to improve services, but also they're used in policy documents, they're used for kind of funders and commissioning funding, that kind of thing. So it's very different to what I was doing before, but it is the best job I've ever had, so I like talking about it. Emily, you go.
Hi, I'm Emily. I also did the linguistics MPhil at Cambridge along with Zara. We were in the same cohort. Off the back of that, so I'd focused on forensic linguistics, specifically forensic phonetics. Off the back of that, I then went and worked as a senior forensic linguist at the Ministry of Defence. I was there for about a year. As you can imagine, I can't speak in too much depth about what that sort of involved, but it was really good fun, encompassed lots of different areas of linguistics in the defence and intelligence sphere, with lots of contact across government and with the armed forces. I then went and moved to Norge's investment management, where I was a behavioural analyst. So what that essentially meant was the investor teams, they would meet with CEOs, investor relations people at the big companies that they invested in. I was brought in as a linguist, so I wouldn't necessarily listen to the financial content of what they were talking about. What I would do is assess their communications. So I'd look at whether we thought that they maybe were being deceptive. Did I think that they were being completely honest and telling the whole truth about certain areas of their business? I would look and identify certain topics where there might be more risk, and then I would work with the investment team to solidify that thesis. It also meant that I was doing a lot to do with the analysis of quarterly earnings calls, which, if you don't know, are financial documents that publicly listed companies are required to create, which discuss their performance. So I would analyse that both from a sort of lexical point of view, and also encompassing elements of phonetics in my forensic analysis of what, again, I thought the riskier areas were. We also did some work with the AI team there to help build a large language model that would be able to be bespokely trained on the years of data that we'd collected. So I then left that job, and now I lead the performance team at a AI company. So it's kind of less directly related to linguistics, although that is still a very large proportion of my job. My role now, the AI model essentially is focused on employee training and competency. So I help give input in terms of how we should write and author questions for that, certain things to do with content generation and communications, training our account directors in terms of how we should communicate that across to our customers. I've literally been there 2 and a bit weeks, so very early days, but that's much more of a broader role, although it still has some elements of linguistics in. So thanks. I'm not sure, I'm really sorry, I don't know who else to pass to that was on the email.
No,
Yes.
that's okay. Actually, there's nobody. And actually, interesting story. I was going to include myself as one of our panelists, but the reason why is because I did have a job before I did have a few jobs before I joined before I came for my PhD, and but then I was thinking, well, this is a panel for like people who actually have like jobs right now, so I that's the reason why I didn't include myself. But a bit of introduction, on myself is that I like Sean and I, yeah, we met back in Pittsburgh, and after I graduated from my master from Pittsburgh, I started working as a computational linguist for our medical center at the University of Pittsburgh for like an AI startup team to review their medical records because U.S. medical records is a mess. Like they don't really have like a coherent system to support them to do the analysis back then. I think it's still the case now. And then after that, I came back to China and I was working for Apple for their Siri Mandarin improvement project. And after Apple, I went to a research team in one of the Chinese university doing still AI related stuff, and that actually inspired me. That project actually inspired me to do my current research, which is in online test-based counseling, because I think when I was working at the Chinese university, it was the first time like OpenAI released their model. I don't remember when it was what it was called back then. It feels like a long time ago. And then anyway, and then the team was trying to train their model to produce like counseling data, which is they are trying to like train their model to produce, like counselor like speech, so that they can use the product or publish papers in like regarding this kind of topic. So that kind of like inspired uh my research topic right now. So but anyway, I just feel like maybe as I will give more voice to people who do have a job and then who have a lot of experiences, like more updated experiences. Okay, so let's start with our first panel question. So because of our last session by our speaker Anna Marie was about linking like networking skills. So I want to start our first question with how do you all like network when you were when you didn't really know anything about like industry jobs and like outside of academia. And so did you do anything particularly that you found it helpful to take you to where you are, or are there things that you found is not like they are not that helpful and you also feel comfortable to share with us? Yeah. Anyone want to go?
Yeah, I can lead. So to those of you who were at the post-grad summer day in August last year, you'll have heard this before from me, but yeah, so when I was finishing my master's, there was this big conference in the space of speech and technology called Interspeech. I attended there. That was a multi-day conference. I didn't have a paper published, but I just went along because I thought it'd be interesting, maybe meet some people and just see what other people are doing in the space. At the time, I was thinking of doing a PhD. Got chatting with some people there, and it actually was a very good place to meet people. Because not even necessarily that the person you're talking to will have a job for you, but they may have spoken to someone else. And that's how I ended up chatting to these guys from Speechmatics. One of the people who was running a stall I'd been chatting a lot with and came up later and said, George, here's Remy, they're looking for interns. George is looking for an internship, have a chat and see what happens. And so I did. I was there as an intern for 3 months and went on. So I think even academic spaces where there may be industry people there too is a really, really top spot to be. Even if you don't necessarily get a job out of it, making connections in the space, whether that's, I mean, it could also apply to academic things going forwards as well, I'm sure. I mean, I had some PhD discussions come out of that as well. So that's one of the main ones. I think being available on LinkedIn can help too. Been invited to some networking events there, or at least some are available, but I also know it's something I'd like to be doing more of actually this year as well, like actively going to networking events, whether that's like university alumni ones or industry specific ones.
Yeah, I think I do vividly like remember you sharing that like during the summer school day, and I think it is really a good idea to just I think maybe just talk to somebody without that, I mean with this purpose, but without the expectation of an, certain outcome. I think maybe if I understand that's the man side you were describing, like networking can lead to like more connections, not only to like a certain job, because I do have this feeling that sometimes people expect that, oh, if I talk to this X person and then this person will give me like a job right away. Maybe that's how it not really how it works. So yeah, I think that's really insightful. And anybody want to jump into like their networking skills with people, like going to conferences and workshops and stuff?
I just wanted to add on the back of that, I think a really good way to approach networking is to try and learn something from someone else and leave someone with something that they've learned from you. I think what you just said, if you approach it from a perspective of this will help me get something, whether that be a job, etc., is probably the wrong way to go about it. It should be about paying a genuine interest in someone else, their business, what's going on there. And then off the back of that, maybe you'll talk to someone else. Maybe they'll find you interesting and they'll direct you elsewhere. So I think having the confidence to go and do so, to just strike up conversations with people, whether it be at a specific networking event or any kind of careers talk, and paying a genuine interest and being a good conversationalist.
Yeah, I think that part, I really can relate to the part when you were talking about, being genuine about what people are doing. Because I myself definitely had those like ingenuous conversations with people. Like I'm not really interested in what they are really doing, but I just, want to, get a job out of it. But I mean, being genuinely interested, like in what people are doing, I think it's about passion, right? It's like this connection you are building with this person instead of like, just talking with like a certain person. Like, and you are not like just forced, like you are not just doing networking for networking, but you're like building this connection. Like no matter like you don't really, I mean, you do care where this will go, but in a way that you just like right now, this moment, you just care this connection. I think that's quite not something that people will talk about when in terms of like sort of networking, but I think that's a really, really good thing to mention. Yeah. Thank you.
I think all of the kind of thoughts that I had about this question before today's session build off what kind of George and Emily have just said, but particularly what Emily was saying about it being genuine. I controversially don't like networking. I never have. I've always found it difficult and forced a bit. And as soon as it is framed as just an opportunity to get to know people, it just feels so much more natural for me. I think it can be tricky to go in with an agenda because you end up kind of tunnel visioning yourself. And I think much as it's important to kind of show your skills and what you can do and kind of put yourself out there, I think one of the most important things I found as somebody who has both obviously been kind of like in the kind of interview process in industry, but also on kind of interview panels, is that you want to be a person that people want to work with. You want to be a person who is nice and interesting and interested. So I would say that going into those spaces as authentically as possible is really important. And it's okay to show a bit of personality. You don't just have to kind of be like, hello, here is my CV, goodbye. That's kind of a weird interaction to have. And I think, like Emily was saying, about kind of showing a genuine interest in people and what they do. So asking questions like, how did you get into that? What's the most interesting thing about that? That sounds really, that I don't know much about that. Can you tell me a bit more about it? Is a much nicer kind of relationship to foster than, hello, how can you help me? How can I help you? Much as that might be quite efficient, I've always felt more comfortable kind of going into those spaces with that point of view instead.
I'm happy to add something here as well, if you can hear me okay.
Yeah, I think we can hear you okay, but is it okay you are talking while driving? I'm more concerned about that.
It's not illegal, so it's fine.
We're recording it.
No, people, there's hands-free phone. I'm on the car phone. It's not a problem. One of the main points I wanted to make here was that, like, to try and not overlap with anything that anybody else has said, the unsolicited email is such a valuable tool for building your network. It's helped me so much in my life build connections and relationships that have then turned into opportunities. And like, it sounds quite daunting as a student to be like, oh, this person's really impressive, or important, and like, oh, what happens if they don't reply, or they think I'm not interesting or whatever. The worst thing that can happen is that they say no, and if they don't reply, you follow up and then they say no, that's like still the worst thing that could happen. And the best thing that can happen is that they're impressed by you being forthright and resourceful and interested in them, and that's how it's worked out for me, at least. You have to, in some sense, take charge of the opportunities that come to you rather than just hoping that they might fall toward you. So if you like someone, you're interested in someone, you're interested in their work, it applies in the academic world as well. It's a super good idea to reach out.
Okay.
I could quickly. Oh, sorry, Tom.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I'll try to be brief, and I think I can hit on a point maybe that other folks haven't talked about yet. And I agree with everything everyone said before too. And I also agree with Hannah that I think it's taken me a while to learn to approach networking in a way that works for me. Let's put it that way. It often feels unnatural to me, and so if any of you feel like networking doesn't feel quite right, you can find allies out there. I guess we can put it that way. And it does, I think it's something that gets easier with time and with practice. Some of it is trial and error, I think too. But the point that I wanted to make is, and what I always would talk with grad students about when I was a grad student, after I didn't mention, I worked for probably about 6 or 7 years prior to going back to graduate school for my master's and my PhD. I worked with a nonprofit organization that focuses on LGBTQ issues in K through 12 schools here in the US. It's like an NGO or a charity. And I worked at another university on the staff side, on the administrative side, before going back to the sort of academic side in graduate school. And both of those experiences were things that led me to opportunities when I was a graduate student working on my own research or working on my dissertation, and then now in the current position that I have. And I think another way of putting that is that you all have existing networks already, people that you are already in touch with. You may not even think about these people all the time. They might be former professors or former supervisors that you've had, or they might have been people that just worked in the same office or the same space with you many years ago, or people that you volunteered with at a nonprofit organization, for example. But I would encourage you as much effort as you're putting into reaching out to new people. And I do agree with Tom that, reaching out to folks and introducing yourself and kind of the cold email can be really effective. But you already know a lot of people, and reaching back into your networks that already exist can be a really productive way to find new opportunities. So just as one example, the position that I'm in now came because about 10 years ago, I worked with the current president at this university when she was a dean at a college that I was working at in a completely different state. I feel like the theme of my contributions will be like other lifetimes ago, right? This was sort of a lifetime ago, but we happened to both reconnect at the right moment, and an opportunity came out of that. So that's all to say. I think you have people already in your network that you can kind of re-network with as you move forward. You've already built those relationships.
I see Hannah is raising your hand.
Yeah, I just thought I'd add on to that.
And George
I was
as
typing.
well.
I was typing in the chat,
Yeah.
but then thought I'm gonna say it out loud.
Yeah.
Completely agree. I think that one of the things that was incredibly beneficial for me was kind of keeping in touch with peers who had already pursued careers outside academia. In a very kind of practical sense, that worked out for me because I got in touch with somebody I know who worked in a field that I thought I didn't know much about, but it sounded quite cool. And it turned out she had since moved into impact and evaluation, told me about it, and I was like, that sounds great. I'm going to apply for a job like that. But also seeing people who have successfully transitioned into different stuff and knowing that it's possible and that there's that kind of holistic understanding of like, oh, there's so many worlds outside of this. So I think just seeing the journeys as well as actually kind of keeping in touch with them is really, really cool. Really good idea.
And George, you have two hands on. I don't know how you do that on Teams.
Well, I think it's the order maybe of who put their hands up first.
Okay.
I was going to say, like, in addition to what we've all said before, is like not only, when you reach out to someone, is the cost very low if things go wrong, but like people are actively happy to be reached out to. Like it's nice that someone's like, oh, I'd like to come to you specifically for help. I mean, there's 5 people here coming back to talk to people who were in similar positions. If any of you reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, oh, it was really nice hearing about your experience, can we connect? Like, even if it's just as simple as that, or if it's for a further discussion, like people are happy to have discussions around things. So don't feel bad. Like, imagine you're in their position. It's just don't worry about how it might come across. People are happy to help as well. Like, as I'm sure you all know, people are generally pretty lovely. And if they're not, then you don't want to hang out with them anyway. So there's kind of no loss here. So yeah, just feel empowered to talk to people, however it works out.
Yeah, I like this mindset that if people like if people just don't reply, and then you don't have to you don't have to care about this. And yeah, but also one thing I guess I have to reflect on what we have been talking about is that it is really a thing for a lot of people that they feel they are worried about talking to people and reaching out, especially reaching out to new people. I feel that when I was starting to do network, and also in terms of like networking, I guess there are 2 ways in general of doing networking. First is face-to-face, and I guess a lot of people find it daunting to do like face-to-face interaction with especially new people and talking about themselves and like getting a job. So that's why a lot of people that I know, they prefer like linking or like emails, like so they don't have to approach people like face to face. And I think they both work. And especially our last session was about linking networking skills. So I would say that whatever works for you, work for you, and just it's really important to go find your own way to do stuff. So yeah, I guess that's my view on this issue. And yeah, and I guess after we talk about networking, let's try let's go to the other panel discussion question that I had, was that because we are like, not we, you guys now are in like, different maps, different journeys, like as a linguist, and you are working with like a lot of different jobs. And so what kind of like skills in linguistics do you find like relevant to your non-academic various industry jobs right now? And I know a lot of you guys are doing, computational linguistic stuff, and so it's like heavily still linguistic, but I'm sure there are skills that is like really heavy when you are in academia, when you're like a student, and but those are not um, they are not being highlighted when you transfer to an industry job. So do you like, can you share your experience? And I see Emily already has her hand on. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so I think outside of having a job that directly uses linguistics, I also, I forgot to mention at the start, between my undergrad and my master's, I worked in sales for a year. And I think one of the key things that I know a linguistics degree has helped me with is communication. So whether that be being able to communicate effectively in person, whether that's writing and how you write to people, how you do your emails, etc., how you construct certain documents that need to be written. But I also think one key thing that linguistics can really help with is being able to adopt your communication style depending on who you are speaking to, and being able to relay fairly technical concepts quite simply. And I think this maybe crosses over into a later question about what challenges people may have from academia to industry. And I think one of them is academia is highly technical, and you're writing to people who are experts. Whereas when you go into industry, people are all sorts of different levels. Not everyone shares the same background. Not everyone has an academic background. So, I don't want someone who did a PhD in physics to speak to me as though I were their physics professor, right? So I think linguistics can really help in that kind of sense, that you are able to adapt your communication style and write in a way which is appropriate for your audience. I know that's really helped me. I also think as well, linguistics is interesting, and I don't know if anyone else finds this, but people are genuinely interested in linguistics and linguistics backgrounds. So I feel that talking about it, especially when you start somewhere new and they ask you what your background is and what you did, I think linguistics is quite a nice way to connect with other people and share that, because lots of people genuinely find it quite fascinating. Yeah, so I'd say those are the top skills, as well as analytical skills. I think people who studied linguistics tend to be quite analytical in their approach to things, which I think can be super helpful for a whole range of different jobs.
Yeah, I really like the point when you mentioned people are genuinely, or most of the people are interested in linguistics, because no matter what, like when I meet people and they ask me what do you do, and I'm like, I'm a PhD student in linguistics, and they will. I don't know if you guys have the same like question from people, but it's always, how many languages do you speak? And I'm like, not really about that, but that also, shows how interested people are in terms like linguistic as a subject, because it's really about communication. Like, and no matter you're doing, formal linguistic or social linguistic or psycholinguistic or whatever aspects linguistic, but it's really about communication. And it actually connects back to when we were talking about networking. Networking is really about like communication, how to make connection with people. So I strongly believe that us linguists, we are natural like networker. Like we can actually make a good connection with people. And we should take advantage of that. Like we should really make it, as our really strong skills. Yeah. Anybody else want to share their views of like their linguistic skill they found helpful or in their job or anything else?
I think for me, I did really enjoy doing linguistics, and kind of if I wanted to look for jobs elsewhere, tech seemed like an obvious application that wasn't academia or speech language pathology. So I think that's something that I explicitly looked for. Those jobs do exist. Get some weird as heck job titles, so it's not very obvious all the time, but there are jobs out there that exist. Yeah, so for me particularly, like the linguistic stuff has stayed pretty key, so it's not as relevant for people who pivoted out like Emily has managed to do.
But just to add to that, I think any job you have, whether it's a direct application of linguistics, I think linguistic skills and skills you learn in academia are always super helpful, no matter what job role you're doing, whether it's directly in linguistics or not. And I think on top of what we were talking about with communication, I've found that even like a socio-linguistic awareness, like I did not specialize in socio-linguistics at all, but even having that awareness of, for example, people who don't have English as a first language, etc., like the kind of appreciation and understanding of other people's backgrounds and the way in which we can adopt our own communication style and the way that we can talk to people and the way that we can have patience with people, etc. I think that that's something that develops quite nicely from a linguistic background. And that's super important because in any professional job, your connections with other people and your relationships with other people, some would argue, matter even more than the actual work you produce in a day. It's how you get on with your team. It's how you build up the trust and respect of others. And I think sociolinguistics and the art of communication and appreciation of other people's communication styles is inherent to that.
Yeah, I guess a few words about, the communication again is I found that when I was working, I found it really, really important to like talk to people from other aspects, like people, I used to work with engineers and they do not really have much knowledge about linguistics, or I work with management teams and they don't really know anything about linguistics. But I don't think it's specifically about the skills. I think is more about, the communication with your team members to, foster this kind of trust, like Emily was talking about, and which is more important. And also going back to what George was, you were saying that, we as linguists, we have to believe that, there are jobs out there, they do exist. And I guess one problem that I had when I was doing my master, that I guess because I didn't really know, what are the resources out there, so I can get to, relate me to those like jobs out there. So I was like, I don't know if those jobs exist. And so I got really scared. And I think a lot of master students, and the still probably master student that I know, they still have like similar issue. And I think that's like more a institutional problem or a systematic problem, because a lot of institutions, they don't really have enough resources for linguistic students, to introduce them. Oh, there are jobs out there, we can go. So I'm really grateful that during the time back in Pittsburgh, our department, they put a lot of effort into building the connection between academia and industry. And I get to realize that, oh, industry is actually not like a concrete thing. It's not that, academia and industry, they're like totally opposite. Like they can, there's a bridge. They actually are connected to each other. When like Sean is working in a institution, in a university, but I will say that uh, and and university is sort of like a company. So your job is sort of like working in a company. So yeah, I guess it's just really get yourself out there and to explore, to find resources. But it's difficult. I'm not saying it's easy. Hannah, I see your hand is up. Yes, and Sean.
My comment on the kind of going back to the question about what skills in linguistics are most relevant outside of kind of academia links very nicely onto Emily's. Thank you very much, because I was a sociolinguist, and I think that in the role that I have now and in lots of different roles, particularly in the charitable sector, I think there's something about like people in general, but specifically sociolinguists who have spent a lot of time paying attention to people's choices, people's communities, people's identities, how they intersect, what influences them, why they might make the choices they make, and kind of spending a bit of time, like dedicating yourself to like understanding an aspect of society or many aspects of society in a lot of depth. I think that really makes you a good person to then go out and work with people, because I think it means that you're thoughtful about things, that you can be kind of hopefully kind of bring nuance to kind of an understanding of a particular community or a situation. And I think it also, I'm not saying that other aspects, other linguistic disciplines don't do this, but I think there is a specific amount of care in sociolinguistics that I've found, like caring about why people do a certain thing, caring about a community's kind of history or culture or prospects or that kind of thing. So in the role I do now, I have to do interviews and focus groups. I do a lot of them with staff, but I also do a lot of them with people who use Marie Curie services, so people who are terminally ill, people who are bereaved, and that's obviously very challenging, but it allows you to have a lot of kind of care, thought, tenderness, I suppose, going into interactions with people like in those situations. And I think also for researchers in general, maybe particularly with linguists, I think there's a lot of, or I hope that linguistics engenders a kind of respect for the kind of time that people give you when they're your data source. When a person is your data source, when they are giving you an interview or an elicitation task or a perception study or something to do with grammar. I was not a grammar guy. That like the fact that a person is giving you that time, I think gives you a bit of particular respect for that data and wanting to make sure that it is analysed and treated properly, thoroughly, carefully, and with kind of respect for their identity and where they're coming from.
Yeah, I can.
Sean,
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, Tom.
No, I'm just handing over to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone said. And I think probably given that I said I work on academic partnerships and grant writing outside of linguistics and other special projects at a university, it will probably come as no surprise that I'm not using a lot of the kind of hard skills, maybe we can put in quotes, that I learned in linguistics in my everyday work. I mean, I would love to be turning to discourse analysis or sociophonetics, which was a lot of what I did, for the last however many years, and thinking about that as I'm creating a draft memorandum of understanding for a community college down the road. But, unfortunately, it doesn't work like that, at least for me right now. But I do still get a chance to teach some courses at the university. I taught an ESL academic writing course last semester. I'm going to teach an Intro to Linguistics course next semester. So that was work that I had done, as a graduate teaching assistant. I love teaching. If you work at a university, or even if you don't, you might still have opportunities to teach kind of as you're moving through your professional work as well. But I think, a lot of the quote unquote soft skills you get both through your linguistics coursework. So learning how to do the kinds of analyses that you do, learning how to receive, understand, synthesize, and communicate something about other research or about data, right? I think this is some of what Emily was saying in terms of being able to communicate, doing that for different audiences. Those are things that I find myself doing all the time and learning new ways of doing all the time as I make my way through the kind of work that I'm doing now. I also think I'll just quickly say I have found it helpful, and it's something that I naturally struggle with. I will tell you, being able to tell your kind of story of self, who you are in, say, a 30-second version of that story, maybe having a 5-minute version of that story, but being able to do that in terms of your research and your research interest and your background, but having that ready to go for many different kinds of contexts that you find yourself in, I think that can be really important too. I think one of the things that I found is, some of these soft skills like being a good collaborator, being a quick learner, having the ability to, work with people, these are things that we probably take for granted. And when we're thinking about the sort of technical expertise that you all develop in linguistics, we're not always thinking about what it means to be doing group work, right? But when you get out into so many different positions, it's a lot of those soft skills that end up being really important, so long as you have the ability to learn new things, which by nature of completing your graduate degrees, whether it's a master's or a PhD, you're proving that you have the ability to learn new things. So having some confidence in that ability and then tapping into those soft skills can be really important, I think. But, again, speaking from my own personal situated experience too.
And I guess Tom also has his hand.
Yeah, that wasn't by accident. I did mean that, I promise. Yeah, everyone's making really great points, so it's very difficult for me to add value, but I'll try. A lot of what we've been discussing is kind of making the implicit assumption, maybe not an assumption, but there's something implicit in the suggestion that like linguists aren't trained to do specific jobs, and we just kind of have to make do with the skills that we get, which is very true in a lot of cases. But it's also worth remembering for linguists that there are a lot of careers that rely on having a linguistics background. There are clinical careers, like as a speech and language therapist or a neuropsychologist, which is where my research is sometimes relevant. There's forensic linguistics, which Emily will know all about, which is a specific track you can take with your linguistics study, likely at starting small scale at an undergraduate level and taking it more seriously at a master level or even a PhD. A couple of great universities in the UK specialise, like Aston, on that sort of stuff. Of course, applied linguistics. I don't know how many people in this call are applied linguists, Sean, right? This is an entire industry now. It does make money in a lot of ways, not in every way, but in a lot of ways on the the dreams and aspirations of international students, which some people aren't so happy about ethically. But it's a massive multi-billion-dollar industry, and fantastic career opportunities worldwide for that. There are jobs for linguists if you want to be a linguist and do the business or science or healthcare of language. And this is worth remembering because I think a lot of people say, oh, linguistics, what are you going to get a job with? I mean, people used to say that to me when I was doing my undergrad, like, linguistics, how are you going to get a job with that? And it's like, well, actually, there you go, And for all the other jobs that are out there, that that aren't relevant to those three sectors that I've described, the analytical skills that Emily and others have been mentioning that you're going to get from doing linguistics will serve you in all of those. So you're basically trained for any job you want, linguistics background required or not. That's sort of my perspective. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but yeah, I genuinely think that. So yeah, I'll stop there.
And Emily, yes.
Yeah, just going off the back of Tom's point, I think it's a really good point that there are jobs out there for linguists. I think there's a certain level of reality in that most people who do an undergrad in a subject do not necessarily go on to then do something specific to that subject, but it doesn't mean that those jobs aren't out there. And I think it's interesting that when I was, for example, doing my undergrad, I had no idea that the jobs that I have done in the last couple of years even existed. I'm not even sure those jobs necessarily existed, and I'm sure like George maybe has a similar thing in that 10 years ago, being a computational linguist for speechmatics like probably wasn't a thing that was a route that was advertised to people. So I think having an open mind and do what you enjoy and focus on building up your skill set around that and staying flexible, because there's also like I wanted to go into something more broad after doing linguistics for a long time, and I'm glad that I've built skills outside of just becoming a linguist in my day job that have really helped with that. So there definitely are jobs out there. Yeah, they always have slightly weird titles, but they are there.
I think it's funny when you said like they have like slightly weird titles of like some of the linguistic jobs. But also like now I have a question that I didn't send to you guys, but is something that emerged from what we were talking about, is that why, so Tom mentioned that some people will have this question or mindset about, oh, what are you gonna get after doing a linguistic degree. And also our faculty members, I think since undergrad, like they are really heavily on just giving like academic jobs information. So I'm not sure like why we linguists, like we have this like mindset that like doing linguistic job is not like real jobs, and why people outside also have this like really similar view, and why is that? Anybody like follows my question? I'm like really curious.
I think misunderstanding of what linguistics actually is.
Yeah, misunderstanding of what linguistic really is, and also why our like insiders, like our faculty members, like professors and lecturers, they also have this, sort of, I would say, like a narrow mindset of that. It's quite an interesting situation, right? Because I do have friends who, they are not from linguistics, and a lot of them, they don't really have this, non-stop competing mindset of like, oh, should I go to academia or should I go to, industry? And they would just like take whatever out there. So yeah, Hannah and Sean. So Hannah first. Yes.
I would say that I think not at the fault of anybody, but for people who are in academia and have been for a long time, it can be very hard to visualize anything else outside of it, because it is such a specific way of life. And I think it is a bit of a bubble. So I think some people might just not have the capacity to be able to kind of, I definitely didn't. When I was kind of pursuing an academic career, that was it for me. That's all I could think about. And I'm so grateful that I didn't. But I think it's a very specific way of life. And I think it's a very specific path that any academic, not just linguistics, would get sent on. So I think sometimes it can be quite hard to kind of see outside of those walls.
And Sean?
Yeah, I agree. I'll be quick. I agree 100%. I think more, in my experience, more broadly across academic disciplines, when people are trying to make that jump from, what they see as the academic side to industry, or even to the non-academic side at a university, like the staff or the administrative side, it can be hard because we spend so much time in our graduate programs being trained on how to do the work of our discipline, right? How to be on the cutting edge of whatever research questions are most pressing in sociolinguistics or applied linguistics or computational linguistics. And that's amazing, and there's a lot that you can do within that, and you can find positions. It can be hard to find positions to do that. But if that is what you are passionate about, it may take some time, but you can probably eventually find your way doing something like that, right? But I think what I always observed, in graduate school, as a linguist, going and doing my own research and thinking about the kinds of projects I wanted to work on, I should add, I was pretty multidisciplinary, which sociolinguistics tends to lead itself or lend itself to allowing for that. But I would find myself in spaces where I was working with folks in gender, sexuality, and women's studies, or I would be in linguistic anthropology. I even went into childhood studies that has these historic roots in children's literature and in English literature departments. But one of the things that I observed is, oh, right, all of these different fields have their own ideas about language. And they all have long traditions and long histories of thinking about language. We have a sort of specific way of doing that in linguistics that isn't incompatible with that. But I do think sometimes the fact that within the academy, there are so many different ways of thinking about language, and these folks are not always coming together in different disciplines and talking to each other, that can lead to feeling sort of siloed, at least in my experience, as the only linguist in the room with, a bunch of cultural anthropologists, for example. And I think, what am I doing here? Learning a lot, but there can be barriers to explaining to them what linguistics is and kind of what the value of it is too.
Yeah, I think Sean's your point on social linguistics. Well, I'm also doing social linguistic stuff, and being like multi-interdisciplinary is actually in a way can be isolated if you're only working on your own and in this path. But also in another light, I will say that this in multi or interdisciplinary mindset or view will be great if because then like this training, this multi disciplinary training will like enforce you to have the ability to work with people coming from different sectors. Because a lot of in my experience, I don't know about you, Sean, but like a lot of like us like social linguists, like we speak different languages. Like we like languages, like even we are all social linguists, but I found it difficult to talk to variationist somehow. Many like because I do discourse analysis, conversation analysis, and they like very social linguistic variationists. They are really different from my discipline, even though we're in this like family. But this also enables my ability to talk to them with questions and yeah, the war, like we're studying the social linguistic war. And yeah, but it also enables me to bring questions to them and like try to understand what they are talking about. And this also kind of like a skill that I took on to my industry jobs. And so like when I encounter like people who I'm not really familiar with their discipline and I'm curious about what they're doing, and I do understand we speak different languages, but I have this training that I know I'm able to talk to them, communicate with them, even though we speak different languages. So yeah, that's maybe the beauty of being social linguist and also linguist, and is that the capability of like talking to people and communicating people with like from all kinds of backgrounds. Okay, so yeah. Oh my God, variationist, no. Sorry, no offense, but like variationist language can be a little bit difficult. So before we move to Q&A session, how about we each of our panelists have a few words of or advice or encouragement to our audience about your about this academic about your journey or about other people's like future journey, like a few words to end this panel discussion today. It could be like to your old self, like it could also be like that. Let's.
I'd say relax, like things just fall into place. And if you're working hard and you're doing your best to build up a broad skill set, then the right path will find you. And unless there's like one specific thing that you really, really want, to keep a nice open mind and be flexible, take risks to different opportunities and go for things, because you never really know. But yeah, I wouldn't stress about these kinds of things. I think that things come your way, and it might not always be exactly what you expect, but if you have a positive attitude and an open mind, then it'll always be good. It saved me a lot of stress at undergrad.
So have fun. You guys are all smart people doing smart things. Feel empowered as well. Like one of the weird things is like it's okay to decide a job's not for you or a workplace. You can start down a pipeline. You can reject companies as well. So I'll say that. On the flip side of looking for jobs, you can turn down jobs, turn down places for whatever reason. So feel empowered in that too.
I think my overarching thought is I hope nobody does feel like this, but I think I definitely grappled with it when I decided that I wasn't going to kind of pursue academic jobs anymore. It felt like a failure, because that was what was expected of me, and it's horrible to feel like that. I promise it's not true. It's absolutely not. It is very freeing, both in kind of like a metaphorical sense, but also in a very kind of practical, like I have a much better work-life balance now than I did when I was in academia, and there is a lot less anxiety and perfectionism that kind of plagues me, than I used to when I was in academia as well. So there is actually, it's not a failure, it's actually often a success or a very kind of, like I said, enlightening or freeing or liberating step.
I'll quickly just add and say I agree 100%. I think I also felt like, even though in a weird way, I have to remind myself, like I went into graduate school not sure if I wanted to pursue an academic position, somewhere along the line, doing research, going to conferences, teaching. I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. And maybe still could, but I had always been open to other things. But I think I definitely did struggle with that feeling of, am I failing by not pursuing a position in academia? Am I putting all of my training, to waste, essentially? And I agree 100% with what Hannah's saying, and I'm so glad that Hannah brought it up. And it's a process that I think we all have to go through to work through those questions, figure out what our next positions are going to be, and then gradually, I think, refining the way that we're thinking about the work that we do and the value that we add to the organizations that we work with, right? But the the other thing I was going to say quickly, God, I'm so long-winded, sorry, is I think a good thing to keep in mind is you really just need one initial opportunity. It's amazing what getting your foot in the door at a company, at an organization, on the administrative side of a university will do. My boyfriend used to joke with me when I was kind of in the throes of applying for jobs and getting, be prepared to get some rejections. You're going to toughen up a bit through that process, but he would always say, you're going to get a job and you're going to hate it just like the rest of us, which is not true. I do like my job a lot, but it was a really nice perspective from someone on the other end. I think it goes along with what George is saying, that you will eventually be in a position that you're turning opportunities down and you'll have things coming to you. But just like I imagine a lot of you felt when you were applying to graduate school, at least for me, I thought I just need one offer. I need to get in one place, and then I will find a way of doing that. So it was sort of that same mentality when it came to applying for jobs and kind of, giving myself a pep talk along the way too. You'll love your job. I shouldn't say that you'll hate your job.
Yeah, just
sorry, Emily, go ahead. No.
I just wanted to add on the back of that like a first job or a first step can be exactly that. And it kind of echoes what George said as well, that doing something for a bit and deciding it's not for you is completely valid. Like I did that. It happens, and you just need your foot in the door in the right place. And then from that, you meet new people, you get new opportunities, etc. But I don't know if I'll have the same career, for the next, we've got to work until we're like 70 these days, haven't we? So time for a couple of career changes in there. So yeah, the first job is not necessarily the lifelong one.
I plan on several career changes.
I'll try and round up with some words of advice and encouragement. Oh, sorry, George, did I speak over you there? Sorry. Okay. The thing about, I find this a really tricky question because on some level, I also want advice, right? I also want to be like, I'm nowhere near ready to be giving people advice. I want to be told how to get even further, right? So, the thing about leaving academia being a failure, I'm really bullish on the opposite of that. Look, universities are going down the can. It's not a great place to be. Academics get paid terribly. They're working ridiculous hours, and it's an extremely noble, virtuous life, right? And you feel like you're really changing the world when you're there. But if you don't then engage the real world in the right way with your research, what world have you changed, right? So that's often not seen to be an academic's job. So there's a massive disconnect between academics and the real world, in the way that makes the noble profession in practice feel less noble when you're there. As a PhD student, that's only how I feel, even when I am doing genuine clinical work, right? I would say that a lot of the advice here has been extremely useful. I think that it's because I'm imagining that everyone in the audience, as a linguistics postgraduate student, at least wanted to consider academia. I want to say that life on the outside is probably better, and that's really worth bearing in mind. Getting an academic job is not meritocracy, right? Anna Marie is in this call, and she once shared a statistic with me on linguistics PhD students to getting academic tenure track jobs, right? 3% of US-based linguistics PhD students get a tenure track job in linguistics, right? So 7% of you have the opportunity for a better life. And I think that's something worth celebrating in some sense. But referring to my comment about the better life possibly being on the outside, I think those are my words of encouragement. That that there is a much bigger, great, with more money, more free time, more happiness, and all that you have to do is find it.
Okay, I'm aware about the time, but also something Anna Marie was saying in the chat that she was not aware of the statistics Tom was talking about, the 3% thing. Don't want to call you out, Tom, but I know what you're saying. You know, like the percentage of like academics getting.
I definitely told me this. Definitely told me this. I remember it very vividly, and I was so shocked by it.
Okay. Oh, okay.
But-
So good. Okay,
Okay.
I think we don't really have time for Q&A. I'm so sorry if I guess if you if the audience, if you have any questions, like maybe just connect with our panelists on LinkedIn or wherever, like email them. They're all lovely people and they are, you know, happy to help you and connect with you. So I think that's really the end of our panel session. Okay, Anna Marie said she will verify the statistic part of Tom just mentioned. But yeah, and that's the end of our panel today. And speaking of leaving academia, actually, I think I'm gonna organize one for our upcoming career event talk for leaving academia because I do have a few connections who left academia and actively are, you know, talking people to get out of academia. So I think that will be a really interesting session. And then I will also have one upcoming career event talk for computational linguists. So I will have one of my former professor from Pitt and one of my former colleague, well, coworker from Pittsburgh, who is working at Duolingo right now, and they will probably have a heavily computational linguistic session for us in, I think, July, something like that. But yeah, I will keep you all posted, and that's the end. And thank you all for joining me, and thank you for the really lively discussion. I feel more freeing now that, you know, I just don't want to stay in academia anymore. I'm more toward the side of like leaving academia right now. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks so much for organizing, Tom.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for organizing.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me. I was really worried about, you know, how this will turn up, but I really enjoyed talking with you all. Yeah, and also if you want to join our Leaving Academia session in the future, I will definitely, you know, take you as part of us. That will be a really interesting session. Like everybody's like leave academia with like, you know, a badge or something. That will be interesting. Okay, that's the end. And thank you so much and have a great evening and Sean, you know, afternoon or whatever. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Nice to meet you.
Thank
Good luck,
you.
everyone. Take care.
Good luck. Bye.
Bye.